Like, I would go and be a severed worker from Severance just so that the work me could not remember. Before TikTok, I feel like I'm so old saying that. Jane Sue is the love of my life. I'm so sorry, Wesley, but if she ever appears in real life, I can't be held responsible. Hey friends, it's Sarah, and today I'm going to be tier ranking all of the BookTok books that I've read. I'm a little bit late to this trend, but I wanted to do a tier ranking video, and I was like, have I read enough BookTok books? I don't know. I didn't think I had, but then I started to go through like a list of BookTok books, and I was like, oh, turns out I've read a fair amount of them, just no Colleen Hoover, which in my mind makes up like 90% of BookTok books. But that's not actually the case. I do have quite a few books here. I don't even know how many. I've got a lot of them, like 50 or something. Yeah, I've got like 52 here, I think. I've done only one of these videos before, and it was pretty fun, so let's just dive in and rank some books. So first off, let's go through the tiers. I have my top tier is the God tier. This is like new favorite, just like so good, so excellent, blows everything out of the water, probably made me cry also. Then second highest is worth the hype. So it's something obviously that's been hyped up on BookTok, as all of these have been, but that I think really deserves the hype. Then I have I'm not mad at it. It's not bad. It's like fairly decent. I'm not mad at it. It's mid. It's Not You, It's Me, where I didn't really enjoy it, but it's not necessarily a bad book. It's just not my book. Not worth the hype. I don't understand why it's so hyped up. It's not necessarily bad again, but it's just, I don't think it is as good as the hype makes it seem. Then I have It's About the Experience. There's really only a couple of very specific books that go into this. These are books that are really popular on BookTok because they have something interesting about them. It's not like necessarily the plot or what's actually written on the page, it's how you experience these books. And then we have I Want My Time Back. I feel like I wasted time on this book. I would have been much happier doing something else. If I bought this book, then I also want my money back. And then I have Who Is She for books that I've read a while ago and I don't remember. So it's not that they were really that bad. I don't remember them. They do not leave a lasting impression in my mind, which might be worse than if I did remember it and didn't like it. So anyways, let's just dive in. I do have some books that are like series, and some of them I've read more than one book in the series, but I'm going to treat however many books that I've read in that series as just like the first book. So for example, I have the Atlas 6 and I have read the Atlas Paradox, and I'm just going to kind of mush it all in together. So the Atlas 6, I think I'm not mad at it. It wasn't bad. It was pretty decent. I think the world building was a little medium, but it was good. Atomic Habits. Also, I'm not mad at it. I listened to it in an audiobook, and I think I would have enjoyed it better as a physical book because there's a lot of stuff in there. I think it does have some good ideas. I don't remember some of them, but I would definitely go back and like look through it. Babel. Ooh, God tier or worth the hype? I think worth the hype. It's not quite God tier because it's not like a new favorite. I don't think about it all the time. But it was very, 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 very good, and there's a ton of hype about it, so I think it is worth the amount of hype that it gets. Beach Read, God tier. This I read, when did it come out, like 2019? Man, it feels like I read this book like millions of years ago. But I read it before it was on BookTok, obviously, and I just loved it so much, and I've loved it ever since. Before the Coffee Gets Cold, I don't think it's worth the hype. I really liked the concept of this, but I don't think it works when it's written out because the way it's written, it's like all these little short stories, but then the author keeps repeating the time travel mechanic in each story. For like a whole page, he like talks about how this like works, and I'm like, I got it. I read the first story. I know how this works. I don't need this in-depth explanation. Maybe a like quick little like 1 or 2 sentence reminder, but the author would spend so much time just like repeating this time travel mechanic that it took away from the rest of the stories. So I don't think it's worth all the hype that it gets. Jack Edwards, you were lying to us. Emily Henry is just, she's always God tier. Book lovers, that inversion of the like Hallmark trope where we follow the like stoic girlfriend who's always being left for the small town girls. Ugh, so good. Kane's Jawbone, this is one of the books that I created the It's About the Experience category for, because this one is a story, several stories, I still don't know, that are like all in the wrong order, and so you're supposed to like read through it and through clues and context like piece together the story, find out who was murdered, who did the murdering. I bought it, I cut it up, I put it on my wall for a little bit, and then I couldn't do it. It's too hard. And it was written in the, I want to say like the 20s or something. It was written several decades, if not 100 years ago. And half of the struggle is just trying to figure out what's slang from that time and what's like an actual clue. So it's tough. Crying in H Mart. I feel like I should have had another category here because it's, I guess I'm not mad at it. I don't think it was quite worth the hype. It was very good. It missed the hype for me. Like, I feel like worth the hype is like, I read it and I was like, yeah, I get it. Whereas Crying in H Mart, I was like, that was good, but it kind of got the same hype of like Chanel Miller's Know My Name. I just didn't feel like it was quite on that level. So while it was very good and very upsetting, it's not quite in the worth the hype category for me. Daisy Jones and the Six, God tier. This book I love so much. It's one of my favorites. Actually, all of these so far are like my favorite books. It was just like chef's kiss, so good, written so well, some good character studies in there, and I love a good like character focused book. So this was just excellent for me. Daughter of the Moon Goddess is an It's Not You, It's Me, because I think if you like fantasy, you will enjoy this. But I am not a huge fantasy reader, and so I did not, and I felt like the time skipped around a lot, and I don't know, it didn't do it for me. Delilah Green Doesn't Care is going in worth the hype, because I think it's just a delightful sapphic romance. I really enjoyed both the characters and a lot of the tropes that were in it. I had a grand old time, and I did reread it, so there you go. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, I think also worth the hype. I'm not sure how much hype it has, but I really liked it. It's not quite God tier, but I did immediately want to read the sequel, so I think that makes it worth the hype. Every Summer After, I think also worth the hype. Almost God tier, but like the one crucial thing missing is that I don't quite remember what happened in it. I remember like the feeling it gave me and really enjoying the setting and the characters and the chemistry, but it didn't really stick in my brain the way that like the Emily Henry books did. So therefore, it is just in worth the hype, because it was very good. Oh, Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Oh, I thought I was going to do a DNF tier, but I did not. So she's going in Who Is She? This is also maybe going to be like DNF'd it, because I started reading it and no, actually, you know what? We can go in It's Not You, It's Me. I did DNF it because it was too spicy for me, but again, that's my bad. I did read her YA debut, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Talia Hibbert writes great banter, but this was just too spicy for me. I am not good with super steamy books. Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I still have not read the rest of them, but I'm not mad at it. It was pretty good. It was very enjoyable. I do not remember what the mystery was anymore, but I do remember enjoying it and having a fun time being pulled along and just following what's going on with all the crime and everything. Happy Place destroyed me emotionally. Horribly misleading title, because I felt distraught through reading most of this book. It was excellent. I loved it so much. I did almost cry. So yeah. Heartstopper, also God tier. I love Nick and Charlie so much. These graphic novels are amazing. The Netflix show was so great, and I can't wait for season 2. These boys have my heart in a stranglehold. Chokehold. What do the kids say? Chokehold. Honey Girl. I think Honey Girl's going in God tier, because when I read it, I felt so seen with her struggles around like academia and living up to like parents' expectations. And while the romance in here wasn't quite what I wanted from it. I thought like this was more of a romance and less of a coming of age. It was still good, and I liked her wife. So I would say God tier, just for the exploration of like identity and coming of age sort of thing as someone in their like 20s. I Kiss Shara Wheeler, I think is in Worth the Hype. I really enjoyed it. It was a good kind of like Paper Towns rebuttal, and I had a good cast of characters, some good kind of like, maybe not quite found family, but good friendships. I think Casey McQuiston does an excellent job at writing good friendships. And so I had a grand time. It wasn't quite God tier, but I really enjoyed it. If We Were Villains, I think also Worth the Hype. Another good character, another good cast of characters, but you know, if they were all a little messed up. So I quite enjoyed this. I thought, again, a good mystery. I was really hooked. I loved it. I'm glad My Mom Died. I think is God tier because I read it physically and then I immediately went and listened to the audiobook, and it devastated me emotionally. Yeah, it's a lot. It's really good, and it's absolutely very disturbing, and I've seen people say it's funny, and it's not. I don't know what part they think is funny, but it is devastating. In the Dream House, also God tier, another incredible memoir. I think In the Dream House is also what I wished Crying in H Mart was, but this one is just, it's so creatively written. It's a relationship told in the frame of like tropes, and it's about like abuse and queer relationships, and it just, it was so good. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I'm not mad at it. I enjoyed it. I feel like a lot of people either really love or really hate this one. For me, I was like, yeah, it was good. Kind of, I think I gave it like 4 stars, but it didn't like stick with me like crazy. I was like, oh yeah, that was good. And I thought about it for a little bit, but it's not like stuck in my brain forever. Iron Widow is also God tier. I feel like half the videos on my channel just talk about Iron Widow and its author. Oh, so good. Such an excellent main character, such a cool world building. I love it. Apparently Just Kids by Patti Smith is really popular on BookTok right now. Who is she? I read it. I don't know why I read it. I think it must have been for some sort of readathon or something, because I don't know who Patti Smith is, and I didn't know who What's His Face was either. It was kind of interesting reading about the relationship, I think, but I just remember being like, are you guys okay? KK by Vaishnavi Patel, I think is Worth the Hype. I think Jenny from This Story Ain't Over is the whole hype of this book on BookTok, but it's excellent. She is like a one-woman campaign for this book, and it worked. I read it and I loved it. It was so good. I don't think it's quite God tier. Again, it's not like lodged in my brain like a tumor, but it is very good, and it was a really interesting retelling, and it had some really good kind of like morally gray characters, which I enjoyed. The Kiss Quotient, I think is another It's Not You, It's Me, another very steamy book. I can't do it. I just couldn't do it. The relationship started off physical and then went to the emotional, and that's just the opposite of how I like my book and I guess real life relationships to go. I did like the like emotional connection and her like talking to his family and the autism rep, but it was too steamy for me. I couldn't do it. Okay, Know My Name. I've talked about this one like 3 times already, and I forgot it was on here. God tier. Chanel Miller destroyed me. I recently listened to the audiobook of it. It's really good, but like be prepared to be in like mourning for a week afterwards, because like, oh my god, it's really brutal. And like so well written. Chanel writes beautifully, but it will kill your soul a little bit to read about what happened to her. Lore Olympus, I think, is Worth the Hype. I follow it on Webtoon. It's the highlight of like every Sunday for me, is reading the new comic that comes up. So I really like this. It's a good romance. The art is really fun and cool and pretty, and it's just a really cool take on Greek mythology of Hades and Persephone. The Love Hypothesis. I'm so sorry, Jenny. I want my time back. When I read it, I gave it 3 stars, but the farther away I get from reading it, the more I just remember the really, really bad parts, and I cannot get over it. my friend also read this, and then we realized there was like an additional chapter from Adam's point of view on, I think, on Allie Hazelwood's website. And so we were on vacation and drinking and read this out loud, did a dramatic reading of it out loud to each other, and it was horrifying, but a great bonding experience. But I do want, maybe not necessarily my time back, but like I do want it to be scrubbed from my brain a little bit. There's just certain parts that I need to have like physically removed from my brain. Like I would go and be a severed worker from Severance just so that the work me could not remember Love Hypothesis. Okay, maybe that was a little too mean. It wasn't quite that bad, but maybe it was. The trauma of it was. Okay, moving on. Loveless. I think is worth the hype. I feel like it should be God tier, but I also don't remember it well enough. I feel like my criteria for God tier is like it's stuck in my brain and I think about it all the time. And Loveless didn't quite do that, but I really did enjoy having an Arrow Ace character who was like trying to like find herself in university. Again, I really felt what she was going through. And it's worth the hype. It's really good. Alice Oseman does great work. The Midnight Library, I'm not mad at it. I've seen some people who are mad at it, but I thought it was good. It's kind of like self-help written as a novel. I think it came into my life in a time where I was really open to its message and was kind of like reinforcing things that I had been feeling. So I was its target audience, so it really worked for me. One Last Stop is also God tier. Casey McQuiston does it again. Jane Sue is the love of my life. I'm so sorry, Wesley, but if she ever appears in real life, I can't be held responsible for what I may do. Okay, One of Us is Lying. I'm not mad at it. Again, I don't really remember what happened, what the mystery was, but I enjoyed myself while I was reading about it. And that's all you want. People We Meet on Vacation is also God tier. Apparently some people don't like this Emily Henry as much, but I love it. I love Friends to Lovers. I thought the like flashbacks were done really well. It's like, and maybe, I don't know if people like don't like that she's super quirky or whatever, but I think it's just like real happy, real cute. There's some good like yearning and angst, and the more I talk about it, the more I want to reread it. Maybe I should reread all of Emily Henry's books and then rank those. There's only 4 books and they go by very quickly. I don't know, let me know if you'd be interested in watching a video where I reread Emily Henry's books and decide which one's my favorite, which actually sounds maybe a little bit like torture because I don't know how I could choose which one's my favorite. But let me know if that's something that would interest you and I'll consider it. Portrait of a Thief, I also want my time back. It wasn't like really bad, it just, I was very excited about it. It did not do what I wanted. I have a video where I talk about this more in depth, but I think there was a lot of like repetition of certain phrases. There was a lot of kind of thinking about what someone else might be thinking. Like it was like character A thinks that character B would be sad about this. And like, why couldn't character B just be sad about it? So I found that very bizarre and I wanted more heist. There was like a lot about kind of like identity, which I enjoyed, but to the detriment of like the plot when this was really marketed as like a plot heavy heist, Six of Crows kind of thing. And it was not. And there was, I think similar to the Atlas 6, there was a lot of like them saying that they're studying. And you're like, okay, but what are you studying? Like, what do you mean you're studying? Like, they studied the floor plan, or like, they studied this. And you're kind of like, I feel like I'm not getting enough detail on like how you're actually executing it. Anyways, yeah, I just didn't live up. Priory of the Orange Tree, I think, is worth the hype. As I have said previously, I'm not a huge fantasy reader, but I really love this book. I also read the prequel, so that is lumped in with this. But I thought it was really good, and I just had a grand old time. I think the characters were all really well done, and had a very compelling plot, and I could follow the story, which is important for me. Red Queen... Red Queen is going in I Want My Time Back. The first one I do remember enjoying. I read these like closer to when they came out, so it's been a bit. I remember liking the first one, and then I remember not liking the rest of them. So that's where I want my time back. I should have just stopped with the first one and made up my own ending in my head, and that would have been just as good. No, that would have been like a lot better than reading the other three I think books in the series. I didn't need it. Red, White, and Royal Blue is worth the hype. I need to reread this one because, again, I read this like before BookTok was a thing at all. Before TikTok. I feel like I'm so old saying that, even though TikTok is like 4 years old or something. Anyways, that's not important. Red, White, and Royal Blue, I just remember it being like really hilarious. I thought the humor in this was top notch, and I had a good time with it. So I want to reread that and laugh. S is another It's About the Experience. These are the two books it's about, because this one is like a story, and then in the margins there are like two people who are writing back and forth to each other, and it's kind of like their story within the story, and they come back to this book and like write to each other at different times in their lives. So I think when I read this to like fully experience it, I read it like 4 times, because I read like the text of the book, and then I read like these colors, and then like the next colors in the timeline, and so it was a lot. It was a commitment. I don't remember anything about it other than that it was interesting. So like that's why it's about the experience, because I cannot tell you if the plot in this is good or not. I have no clue. But it was quite the experience to read it. 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I think, is worth the hype. I read Daisy Jones first and Evelyn second, and I think maybe that's why Daisy Jones is in God tier and Evelyn isn't, because I really did enjoy Evelyn as well. And I think it's just whichever one you read first is the one that you're going to prefer. I'm not sure if that's true, but I also just really like the more unique format of Daisy Jones, whereas 7 Husbands is a little more, it's like more like written normally. It's not that interview style, but it does involve interviewing. Anyways, it was really good. I liked it. Again, like if you like Daisy Jones, you'll probably like this as well, and vice versa. They are both very like character forward, character driven, and have interesting stories and are really good like historical fictions. Shadow and Bone, I want my time back. The show was good. The show was coming out, so I was like, I will read Shadow and Bone. And I read it and I was like, that sure was a YA fantasy. Like, I think it was maybe one of the like earlier ones. So like a lot of YA fantasy now is kind of like based off of that. But like I was reading it and I was like, I feel like I know what's happening this whole time. I just feel like I've read this in other books before. And like maybe I have, because they read Shadow and Bone and then wrote stuff kind of inspired by parts of that. But I was bored for this whole series. I was so bored. She Who Became the Sun is that It's Not You, It's Me. Because I think, again, like if you're someone who likes fantasy where it's very like politics heavy, then you would enjoy this. I did not. I'm not into fictional politics. I'm barely into real politics. Those make me sad anyways. So like this, I didn't need this. 6 Crimson Cranes. I'm going in worth the hype because I quite enjoyed this, and the second one made me cry almost, which I wasn't expecting. I just really like the like mythology of this, the characters, the love story was nice. Yeah, it was really good. This was kind of like a sleeper series. I feel like I didn't really expect to like it that much, and then both ones I was like, wow, that was really good. 6 of Crows, we all know where that's going. God tier. 6 of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Everyone is right about them. They're so good. They're so tightly plotted. The characters are amazing. The found family is so good. I love them so much. My copy is just like bookmarked to hell. Okay, Song of Achilles is also in God tier because it did make me sob, even though it was a reread. I read this last year, I think, maybe for the second time, and just like bawled my eyes out at the end. So These Violent Delights, I think, is not worth the hype. I honestly don't get the hype about this. I read the first one. I will not be reading the second one because I just don't care. The plot just kind of seemed to go in circles a little bit, and I was just really bored by it. And I don't understand why people like it, other than that they like enemies to lovers. But even that, I didn't feel like the chemistry between the characters was great. So I don't get this one. If you get it, please let me know. They Both Die at the End is a Who Is She, because I read this closer to when it came out and I don't remember anything about it. so it can't have been that good. Tomorrow and Tomorrow is God tier for me. I really loved the exploration of friendship in this. It was incredibly frustrating to have them at odds at times and they wouldn't communicate, and I was like, just talk to each other. But it didn't feel like an overplayed miscommunication trope. It felt like the real ways that you aren't honest with your friends or that you kind of like miss each other in translation. And it was so good. John Green recommended it and I was like, maybe I'll give it a try. And I read it and I was like, John Green, god damn it, I would take every single one of your book recommendations. You're so right. The Unhoneymooners, I think is a sleeper. I'm not mad at it. Almost and worth the hype, but there's a lot of hype, so I don't think it quite lives up to its hype. But I really enjoyed this one. I didn't think I would because I'm not usually a huge fan of enemies to lovers, but this was like really funny and the chemistry was really good. We Hunt the Flame, I think is an It's Not You, It's Me. I read the first one and I'm not going to read the second one. I don't think it was bad. I don't know, whatever, something about it just didn't really appeal to me. I can't really remember much. Maybe I should go on the Who Is She? No, I remember vague things. I have like a vague idea of like what it was like, but I think it would be decent. Not it would be. I think it is probably a pretty decent book. It's just not for me. And finally, We Were Liars, one of the OG Book Talk books. I think it's worth the hype. Also read this, I think before Book Talk, or maybe just when Book Talk was beginning. And I quite enjoyed it. I thought that the thing it's really known for was really well done. And yeah, I think this one was good. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't really remember a ton about it, to be honest, but I do remember really liking it and being like surprised by it. So this is my tier ranking. Maybe Book Talk does give good book recommendations. To be fair, I did pull these. I found like a list on indigo.ca of like Book Talk favorites. So some of these might not be quite Book Talk favorites, but I don't know. I've seen, I would say at least 90% of these on Book Talk at some point or the other. I just haven't read like Colleen Hoover, and I feel like that's a lot of Book Talk. And also like the really spicy romances. So if it was like based on books that I've seen on Book Talk and not read, I think they'd all be in the It's Not You, It's Me. Anyways, but yeah, I am pleasantly surprised by how this turned out. I will say that of my God tier ones, I'm gonna count all the Emily Henrys together because as soon as I read the first one, I was like, I'll read anything she writes. So those and Daisy Jones and Honey Girl were all, and Song of Achilles, were all ones that I had read, I guess, and Tomorrow, were all ones that I read like independently of knowing about that they were popular on TikTok. So that might be part of it. But yeah. Turns out that Book Talk does have good books on it, as long as you're not reading Colleen Hoover. But anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Now go read a book. I think the characters are all really done. I'm sorry if you can hear children screaming outside. The weather is nice, and that means shrieking children. Maybe we're just gonna wait a little bit and see if they stop.